Let me, just for a minute, explain Andrew's rights argument for those of you who do not get it. So, there was 2 errors that all the people who were getting pissed made, and Tim also made these errors. When Andrew's talking about whether rights exist, it's the same thing as when he talks about feminism. He's not making an ought claim, he's making an is claim. This is a category error. So what kept happening is Andrew would say, Tim would say, this ought to be the case. You ought to get to this, and you ought to have these rights, and we ought to do these things. And Andrew would go, well, that's nice. Those are very nice assertions about what we ought to do, but what is the case? So when Andrew says women only have rights because men enforce the rights on their behalf, people go, are you saying that women shouldn't have, are you saying we should? No, he's not making a claim about what we should do. He's not making a claim about what ought be the case or how we ought to behave. Okay, so that's the first thing you have to understand. When he says rights don't exist, he's not saying rights shouldn't exist. He's saying they don't exist except as a category of the mind, as a social construction. Now, the reason people don't understand this, and they don't understand what Andrew's saying about how you guys just axiomatically say rights exist when you don't have any way to justify that. Why does everyone believe that? Well, we believe that because we're Americans. And Americans are taught from kindergarten that we are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights because it's in the first paragraph of the Bill of Rights, of the Constitution, right? And no one questions it. It's called a foundational axiom. It means that you just make an assertion, this becomes your starting point, and everything else is argued from there. This is where Tim kept getting hung up as well. But rights should exist. Okay, but do they exist? Well, they should. Yeah, but do they? Well, they should, right? And it just repeats. It's just a cycle. So what Andrew was saying is that yes, you like rights. Yes, you think we ought have them. Yes, you think they're good. You think they're necessary. You know, these are all assertions about how you feel about rights, what you think should be the case. It doesn't mean they're real. So the category error is, do these things exist intrinsically, as you're saying, or are you simply making an assertion that you wish was the case, that you like to be the case, that you prefer to be the case, but you really can't actually justify it? So here's an example. Where, when people say we are endowed by our Creator with inalienable rights, where in the Bible does God give you, what stone tablets have our rights listed on them? To whom did God deliver the human Bill of Rights in the Bible? Did he come down to a prophet and deliver a Bill of Rights? You guys have these rights. That never happened. And the idea of human rights is very new. It's only a few hundred years old. You could arguably say, like the Magna Carta. You could go back to other cultures and say they had some conception here, some conception there. But this idea of just a foundational starting axiom of we're going to start with what we believe people's rights should be is very new. And that's all it is. It's a suggestion. The Bill of Rights, you guys, is a suggestion saying we think this is how society should run. But you don't have the right to live. You might get cancer and die tomorrow, and you go, where's my right? Now, Tim was trying to say, okay, but when someone, commits a murder or something, they're violating a right, and that's different. And what Andrew was saying is, no, you're not born with, the baby doesn't come out and they're like, oh, look at all its rights. It has the right to defend itself. How does a baby have a right to defend itself when it's born? How does it have the right to live? How does it have the right to eat? And so they were confusing categories. They were confusing what they think ought be the case or needs. They were coming up with all kinds of different things because they're scrambling on the spot to justify, not understanding what Andrew's saying. Can't kill you, that makes it correct. That's another error. You're making another error in that case. Andrew's not saying, well, I can take your rights, so I should. He's not making an ought claim, and people can't separate those. They can't understand. He's not telling you anything about morality. He's not telling you look, the sky is blue. Okay? We breathe air. Human beings eat food. These are simple observations of what is. And Andrew's saying there is no simple observation of what rights are. It's not just a thing you observe. It has to be constructed by people. It has to be agreed upon. China certainly does not have the same conception of rights as Americans. And to argue that it's simply a violation of rights doesn't make sense, because you cannot justify that you start with rights. So basically, this is why people get upset. They're not used to presuppositions being challenged. They're not used to their foundations being challenged, and it triggers people very badly. Even people who think they're pretty rational will get really unhinged when you poke at their starting foundation, because you're threatening to collapse their worldview, and that hurts. They don't like it. I remember like some of my moments where I went, oh fuck, this whole Americanism thing isn't what I thought it was. And it really doesn't work this way. And it's really just something we conceptualized that arguably isn't working out so well, right? So if you guys have, if you want to take me to task, if you want to argue, if you want to poke and ask further questions, go ahead and send it in a super chat, send it in a Jono chat. I'm pretty good at the rights argument thing, so throw it at me if you want to. But hopefully that helps. Hopefully that helps. And hopefully you can all calm down, get your panties out of your crack, and understand Andrew's not saying you shouldn't have rights, or I don't prefer rights, or I'm taking your rights. He's not saying any of that. He's not saying what ought happen, okay? He's just saying these are conceptual things. These are categories of the mind. They are not material, realistic categories of what is. So hope that that helps some of you chill, because there were some people in the chat like, this was my favorite channel and I'm gonna unsubscribe. You guys are horrible. You guys are terrible. Calm down, relax, have a beer, have a smoke, whatever you got to do. Just chill. Okay, now we
To be fair, a lot of the people that were complaining, I was noticing our names I didn't really recognize, never seen before. You know, we had a lot of those.
Okay,
like you'll
Jacob,
notice.
I will bring up Jacob's comment. Jacob Vargas in the chat. You're challenging the thing my forefathers died for, and I take that personally. That's woman prattle, sir. You are getting emotional. You are getting upset. Your argument to me about why rights exist is ancestor cry. Do you understand that? Now, again, you're not understanding what I'm saying. I'm not saying your ancestors ought not have died because they thought that this social construction was worth dying for. That's valid, okay? There's lots of things I'd be willing to die for. That's separate from whether or not those things are material reality. They're completely different questions. They're completely different arguments. For you to simply argue that my assertion offends you is woman prattle, and you should learn that, and you should cope with it and absorb it and cry a little bit and punch a pillow and get it all out. But ancestor cry doesn't make rights material reality.
Damn.
We're just saying rights are a construction of the mind. Doesn't mean that construction might not be worth dying for. It totally could be, but it's a separate question. Understand? Does that make sense now? See, people think Andy's the mean one.
I'm afraid to answer.
They're all like, oh, Rachel's brainwashed. Oh, she's so abused. And I'm like, if only they knew. If only they knew that he's actually the nice guy and the voice of reason, and I'm just ruthless. This guy, Liberty Plus TV, says, there was a time people didn't know math. Math was always true. Yes, that's the point. Math is a transcendental category. Math isn't material, and it's not a concept. It's not something we invented. It's something we discovered. These are the categories.
We didn't discover rights. Oh, shit. I discovered the right to breathe air.
Rights didn't just always exist, and then all of a sudden 300 years ago we were like, oh my god, Chuck, I found these rights. Wow, George, those are interesting. It's weird, we've never found them before. These are the category errors you're making.
Thank God you found that right to life, because everybody was fucking dying all over the place before you discovered it.
Before you figured it out, right. No, math is not something we discover. It's something we discovered. It's a transcendental category. It's something that's true. It's not material. It's not conceptual. It's transcendental. It's like logic and other transcendental things. Rights are just a social construct. So they only exist in this one category and therefore have all these limitations on what they actually are and what they actually mean and what they're actually worth.